All right, let's go ahead and get into the subject of tonight's discussion, which is I've titled it Nazis in the Church because of a really interesting letter that was published here recently in the last couple of weeks called the Salt and Light Resistance. And it's one of these things that Christians do from time to time where they think something needs to be addressed, so there's a formal statement made and a number of prominent people sign it, and then they put it out so a lot of other people can sign it as well and join on and say, I agree with this, I endorse this, and this is the latest one. It is specific. It emanates from members of the Churches of Christ, which is why it's on my radar. It's I would say from the progressive wing of the Churches of Christ, as you're about to see, and so there's a lot of things I would disagree with them on, and this is just one of them. So you might have seen this beginning with the Christian Chronicle article on it, which I believe went up today, 3 days ago. So it's very recent. Bobby Ross. This headline letter cites grave spiritual danger facing all Christians, and it's been signed by nearly 1,000 believers. Condemns Christian nationalism and ongoing persecution of people in our country. We're going to look in a minute at the letter itself. I want to commend Bobby. It's a very even-handed article on the Chronicle. I've been known to be very critical of the Chronicle, but they did a good job with this one. Bobby got quotes from both sides, and I liked the pushback that he got, and I liked that they ran that. I'm going to come back to this in a little bit and show just some of the things that were said. Well, let me look at one of them to begin with. One is a woman pastor, Tiffany Dahlman, explaining why they're pushing back on Christian nationalism, and I think this kind of gives you an idea of what's going on here. She says, the embrace of Christian nationalism, even in its subtle forms, rejects participation in the embrace of God, which leaves those who traditionally hold little power in our contexts vulnerable to serious harm. What? This is one of those legalese, word salad kind of things, and it tells you where this is coming from. It's just like they throw these statements out like everyone's just supposed to know what they're talking about. I'm very big on, and I've been posting about this recently, that masculinity is known for clear communication, direct communication. Say what you mean, stand behind it, put your chest behind it, and all that, which is why I don't believe in women in ministry, number one. Number two, what does this mean? Participation in the Christian nationalism rejects participation in the embrace of God. What does that mean? How does one do that? Leaves those who traditionally hold little power in our contexts vulnerable to serious harm. What serious harm? Like what? I don't. Again, and so this just gives you a sense of what we're dealing with here. So let's go to the letter itself. The Salt and Light Resistance, saltandlightresistance.com is where you can find it with the open letter. They've got resources, they have a calendar, they've got all kinds of stuff here. But the main thrust is this letter with a board and then a guiding coalition, I guess. It's a number of ministers and people who are behind it. And then where you can sign on at the end. And as you can see, just lots and lots and lots of names. Number one, Resistance. Funny name because it evokes Star Wars kind of esque stuff. When you say resistance, you think of the rebellion, the resistance, the ragtag group of people speaking truth to power and standing up. The ideas they're going to espouse in this letter are held by CNN and the New York Times and probably most of our elected officials. And I mean, it's one of those like, you are the hegemony. You hold all the power. Your view is the mainstream view. So resistance, kind of playing that us against the world thing, number one, you're off on the wrong foot. But let's go ahead and just read the letter, some of it itself. We write this letter as Christians with affiliations to Churches of Christ and the American Restoration Movement, and as partisans of the Kingdom of God. We write to plead with our beloved brothers and sisters, our fellow recipients of God's grace, about a grave spiritual danger facing all Christians in the United States today. So, kind of selling the danger, right? That danger goes under many names, most notably Christian nationalism, or in its most extreme forms, Christian dominionism. This movement confuses the gospel with a political agenda and makes us susceptible to the death-dealing designs of corrupting leaders. It disguises venomous hatred with pious words. It uses the precious name of our Savior, the saving symbol of the cross, and the music by which we celebrate our redemption to mask the great harm done to large groups of our fellow human beings. It wrests the very scriptures of the church in order to seduce men and women into flagrant disobedience to their Lord. Okay, here's the problem. Christian nationalism, Christian dominionism, that is a thing, but Christian dominionism, but it's very I don't know, it's very uncommon, number one. Number two, the Christian nationalism, okay, we're going to say that that's the threat. What is it? Because this is the problem with Christian nationalism discussions. It can mean anything and everything. For a lot of people, it means the Trump administration. The problem is Trump has, aligned with pro-LGBT causes, and Trump is not. Obviously he evokes Christianity, he references it sometimes, but not a terribly Christian guy, not a guy that is up there saying, I'm doing this, like with Pete Hegseth, you can see more of it or whatever. But, it's one of those, like, what is Christian nationalism? Is it the Trump administration? Is it the blend of Americanism and patriotism, like the first Dallas Baptist thing, where they have the flag-waving worship every, 4th of July? Is it the idea that I espouse, cards on the table, that nations should honor God with their laws and with their government, and that they should work to the good of their own people and prioritize their own people? Simple as that. That's my view of Christian nationalism. What are they talking about? They haven't established what they're talking about, but it's venomous, it's dangerous, it's deadly, it's these kind of scary terms, but we don't even know what we're talking about. And so, going on from there, today the church, to its spiritual peril, turns a blind eye to the clear evidence of great evil. This evil includes the deliberate and ongoing persecution of people of color in our country, a persecution that is intensifying, not receding. We see the removal of migrants without due process of law or regard for the danger those removed may face. We see the steady erosion of hard-won civil rights and even basic respect for African Americans and other people of color, including our fellow Christians. And we hear the church's deafening silence as confused or self-deluding white Christians blithely throw away the good news of Jesus Christ in favor of the bad news of empire. There's us terrible white Christians at it again, right? This was written by a lot of white Christians, and so that's, I guess it's not all white Christians, it's the ones they want to throw under the bus here, but notice the claims. Deliberate and ongoing persecution of people of color in our country. If you're here illegally and you're turned back and said you have to go home, is that persecution? I mean, like, what are we talking about with persecution? Again, they don't define anything. They don't speak clearly. They just throw out there, they're persecuted. Well, how are they persecuted? They say removal without due process of law. If we have 40 million people here who aren't supposed to be here, do we have to wait for all of them to get a trial? Or is it, hey, if you trespass into somebody else's house, do they have to call the judge to get an order to kick you out? No, you just go home. And so this, without due process of law, regard for the danger of those removed, you're here illegal, like that. It's the law. That is what it is. This one's particularly interesting. We see the steady erosion of hard-won civil rights and even basic respect for African Americans and other people of color. What civil rights have African Americans lost? What is being eroded? This is a very big claim of, like, look what's happening. What's happening? All I can think of that might refer to is voter ID laws, which is you're really talking down to African American people when you say they can't get a voter ID. That hasn't even been passed. So what hard-won civil rights have been lost? We aren't going back to separate bathrooms and water fountains and like what? What is this? And so it's these huge, bold claims, but where are we going with it? And then you see in the next one, the rhetoric gets ramped up. We have seen the devastation this toxic brew created in Germany in the 1930s, Rwanda in the 1990s, and elsewhere. This is why I titled the stream, Nazis in the Church. This toxic brew, what came of it of Germany in the 1930s, the things they think that some Christians are endorsing now is the same thing. This toxic brew is the same thing as what Nazi Germany was doing in the 30s, and that's why we have to oppose it. Really, we've got Nazism going on. That's quite the claim with no evidence behind it. It's just you're supposed to believe this, of the polarization, extremism, political violence. Well, hang on. Let's talk about political violence for a second. Charlie Kirk was killed. President Trump was shot and almost shot again. Steve Scalise was shot. Rand Paul was beaten up by his neighbor and surrounded by people another time. Brett Kavanaugh had death threats. That's on one side. What about the other way? You can point to the Pelosi thing. That was not, some right-wing zealot going after them. That was a homeless drug addict. They point to the people in Minnesota. That one is very hard to establish who did what there and whether the guy was acting out of conservative politics or not. That's it. And so when you talk about political violence, this is where, when Charlie Kirk was shot, people like this would jump up and say, both sides got to tone it down. No, both sides don't do political violence. Your side does. Your side celebrates Luigi Mangione. Your side cheered when Charlie Kirk was shot, and you're going to lecture us about the dangers of our rhetoric. No, you don't get to do that. You're on the wrong side of this. You're on the side of 70 million dead babies, and you're here to lecture me for being a Nazi. Give me a break. You guys are the worst. I mean, you guys have allowed so much evil and are standing by for all of this evil, and you're going to call us, throw us under the bus as Nazis and standing up with evil and all of these things, and that this trial has come, they say. Those committed to such evil, again, they haven't established what the evil is, have already made their intentions known. The endorsements of senior members of the current administration. Who are we talking about? Name a name. Name a name who we're talking about. Are we talking about Trump? Are we talking about Vance? Are we talking about Hegseth? Are we talking about... We don't know. We don't know. The language of dehumanization, the rhetoric of unhumans and animals is not new to history. There's deplorables going the other way. I mean, like, this is... Yes, these things happen. No, it's not great. And this is what it is. And again, you got people being shot at, and you're saying it's all from one side. No. We name it plainly because... No, you didn't name it plainly, they say. No. The signs are present. The pattern is recognizable, but they haven't laid out any of it. Too many Christians, especially white Christians, there's the evil white Christians again, inhabit a fantasy world of it can't happen here. What can't happen here? Nazism, concentration camps, what are we talking about? They haven't told us. We have too long ignored the voices of our brothers and sisters of color who pray for us to see the truth, to hear the cries of suffering people, and to act. I did the book review on Joe Rigney's Sin of Empathy. This is the kind of thing of like, well, they claim to be marginalized, they claim to be oppressed, so they must be right. I don't know. Didn't we learn in 2020 that a lot of the claims that were being thrown at us were not true? Yeah, we learned that. We learned that the statistics were overinflated, the claims were overinflated, that this huge racism problem we have, it's so big that the Southern Poverty Law Center had to pay people to be racist so they could fight racism. Like, we just learned that. It's so rich that this letter comes out right as we're learning that most of the public racism displays were astroturfed by leftist money. If it was a problem, they wouldn't have to pay for it. They could find it everywhere. But, of course, these white Christians are the problem. We naively believed ourselves to be beyond such things. This is insane language. We know we're not alone in our concern. Many people stand ready to join with others who resist evil. Yeah, you're aligned with abortionists, with pro-LGBT people. You're aligned with people who oppose God every step of the way, and you're like, but they're right about this. Maybe when you find yourself in that company of people who hate God, and they're like, amen, brother, those Christian nationalists, maybe look at your teammates and go, maybe I did something wrong here. No, you can't do that. You're saying, well, we've got people with us, but it's the other Christians. No, you're on the wrong side of this. Some self-designated Christians, now they have called our Christianity into question here, have drunk the cup of violence and hatred to its dregs. No matter how complicit some of the church may be in the suffering of others, what suffering and how am I complicit in it? This is insane. This is, you see the emotional manipulation of this, and that's the issue with people like this, and they don't have the spine to stand behind it, to name names, to name ideas, to name actions, to any of those things, but they're just, man, they're going to throw the biggest, baddest, scariest people that you can find, terms that you can find towards us people. We all stand under divine judgment as long as we remain silent. Silence is violence, all that stuff. I don't know. I don't think we stand under divine judgment for this. You guys aren't writing a letter against abortion. In fact, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, it was progressive Christians who mourned it because of the harm it was going to do to women who wanted to kill their babies. Who stands under divine judgment? This is ridiculous stuff, and the piousness, the sanctimoniousness, the talking down and calling us Nazis, these people, they have to be stopped. They have to be opposed, and I'm glad to see that there have been those that are. I got a question in the chat, where is this letter found? saltandlightresistance.com. So we face a moment of moral and spiritual crisis. Now is not the time for silence and inaction. Let us wake up and come together for the sake of those who suffer. Here's the other thing. Okay, two things to close on this part of it, and then I'm going to look at some other resources here in relation to it. Justice will prevail. Righteousness will flow like a river. So liberty and dignity for all people will rise victorious over every force that's... We can't be silent. We have to stand up. We have to do these things. Silence and inaction are no good. What do they call us to do? Sign a letter? Like, that's it? Vote against Republicans? Because that's what they're calling you to do, but they're not saying that. This is what happens when you deal with effeminacy. This is what happens when you deal with women preachers and like all of the downslide of the slippery slope that gets you to this stuff of people who are just going to say, oh, those really bad guys, you know who they are. We're not going to tell you who they are, but you know, and it's, come on, man, this is absurd and it needs to be laughed at. It needs to be just turn around and say, guys, get real. That is this. I'm responding to it because it's public, because it's out there. In another sense, it's the answer of fool according to his folly. This is foolishness, and we should treat it like foolishness. Marco, shout out to Marco. Clearly, Jack doesn't value minimizing harm and loving his fellow man. That's it. They got us. They nailed us to the wall, right? And then another one, is this not just liberation theology, which would then be a form of Christian nationalism? That was the other point I was going to get to. They will lecture people like me and you for saying Christians should influence government, but then, you know, that oh no, our kingdom's not of this world, and they'll do the David Lipscomb thing and all that, and then they want the government to enforce their version of Christianity. I wouldn't call it Christian nationalism, though, because they're not nationalist at all. They're globalists. They're Christian globalists is what they are. And so that's really what it all comes down to. So that's a great point that it is liberation theology. It's mixing Christianity and politics, which one of the commenters from the Chronicle article pointed out. That, let's see, this was Jay Kelly at the Austin Street Church of Christ in Levelland, Texas. Bobby Ross, quoted in the article, said, I believe these folks have allowed themselves to be deluded into the very thing they decry, the politicization of Christianity. That's exactly it. I mean, that is the ridiculousness of this, and yet they're going to, but it's okay for them because it's a gospel issue they're standing for, but me and you, we're not allowed to advocate our views in the political realm because then our kingdom, we're being worldly minded and things like that. We don't have to let ourselves be lectured by this. I fell for it for a while. A lot of people fell for it, especially in 2020. And I think a lot of us have looked around and said, no, you have no moral high ground to stand on. And so the guy that brought this to my attention originally was Post-Woke Christian. He's got a Substack. He wrote a response to it. And I just want to see some of his high points that he hit here. He quotes what they say and then responds, quote, this movement confuses the gospel with a political agenda. I'm sorry, but this makes me laugh. It should make you laugh because that's exactly what they're doing. It makes us susceptible to the death-dealing designs of corrupting leaders and disguises venomous hatred with pious words. He responds, kind of like love wins and hate has no home here. Am I right? Yeah, venomous hatred with pious words, like those kind of things. They get people eternally condemned, but they'll stand with those. It arrests the very scriptures of the church to seduce men and women into flagrant disobedience to their Lord. He says, so much could be said here. How many of the signers do you think have abandoned Christian sexual ethics? Again, fidelity to the Bible is not something they care about. It's not like that's, I mean, it's just insanity that they are trying to hammer us for not being faithful to the text of the Bible. He says they throw away the good news of Jesus Christ in favor of the bad news of the empire. He responds, pick a lane. Do you want the empire to do what you think is Christian and just, or do you want it to be secular? This is always a moving target. Again, it's just that the government can't do what right-wingers wrote, what conservative Christians want them to do. It has to do what left-wing Christians want them to do. The church, the quoting again, turns a blind eye to the clear evidence of great evil, confused or self-deluding. And he responds, well then, sending autogynephiles into women's spaces and cutting the breasts off healthy teen girls, but I forgot. That's always bigotry to speak against. He has a great piece there. I'm going to link it. He wrote kind of a responding to them in kind, you know, like if we wrote from their side. And then this was one other one I want to look at that was sent to me by Rick Krug, so shout out to him. He wrote a couple of things and sent it to the signers to try and engage them in a dialogue. But in this one, he points out their logical fallacies. One of them begging the question, he says, the letter asserts that the evidence of great evil is clear, but the entire argument depends on establishing that this evidence exists and is indeed clear. The letter treats the conclusion as the premise. This is what happens with it, is they're doing the, you already know. Everybody knows this is wrong, and so we have to oppose it. And if you don't stand up against this thing that you know is wrong, but they don't establish that it's wrong. They're taking, because they have the cultural hegemony, the power is all on their side. The New York Times agrees with them. CNN agrees with them. Again, MSNBC and Washington Post. And I mean, they have the mainstream position. Then they just assume that, of course, everybody knows that to be true. And so they don't have to do the homework. They don't have to show their work. It's just we all know this. And so he's right. They assert the evidence is clear. They don't show any of it. as to the Nazi thing. He says the letter invokes genocide, mass murder, and martyrdom without establishing the logical chain connecting those historical events to present-day American political conditions. This is a textbook appeal to fear. If you don't act, people will die. The emotional weight of Germany and Rwanda is deployed to short-circuit analytical evaluation of whether the comparison is warranted, but the letter never attempts to establish it. It simply names the references and relies on the reader's visceral response. Ooh, Nazis. Oh man, these guys are Nazis. I called you a Nazi, so I win. That's the level of political discourse we often get. Third, guilt by association. This implies that any Christian who supports the current administration or has not actively opposed it is associated with those committed to such evil. No names, no specific speeches, no specific publications are cited. The reader is expected to fill in the blanks. Vagueness suits them. Vagueness helps them because they don't have to. And somebody can just take this and go, oh, there's bad stuff out there. I'll tack this on to anything I disagree with, and now I win because they're Nazis. And then fourth, false dichotomy. The letter presents only two options: speak out in the manner the letter prescribes, or be complicit in evil. There is no space for Christians who are concerned about the same issues but question the letter's diagnosis, disagree with the prescriptions, or are engaging differently. It's a great point. There's a lot of people who don't agree with me, would not call themselves Christian nationalists in the least, and still said, yeah, I don't think this letter is very fair to the brethren. I think it's divisive. It's things like that. To these people, the way they worded it is, you're complicit. You're part of the violence going on. And then he says, ad hominem by category, white Christians as a category are characterized as confused, self-deluding, and living in fantasy. This is not an argument against a position. It is a character attack on a demographic group. That should bother you. When these guys are the ones that talk the most about racism and racial division and all that, and when they just throw white Christians as a pejorative, like the term itself is derogatory, that's a problem. I mean, if that, again, I know this is like an internet trope. Imagine if the roles were reversed. Imagine if somebody came along and just started saying the same about another group of Christians. I don't think that would go over very well. And so, again, well, Rick hasn't published that, but if he does, I'll be sure to link it in the notes. This post-woke Christian one, again, very worth your time. I want to finish, though, by looking at this. I pulled it up on ChatGPT. These people have been influenced, they don't know it, by something called the authoritarian personality, written by Theodore Adorno and Max, I think Horkheimer was the guy's name. It was post-World War II, and they were writing on how fascism rises and how to prevent it, like pattern recognition so it doesn't happen again. And when you look at it, there's some things where you go, okay, I could see that, and then there's others where it's like, but that's pretty normal. Like that, why is that bad? And it's those influences that trickle down to these people that when they see somebody say, I love my country, that's nationalistic, that's evil, you're heading towards fascism. That, hey, I think America is for Americans, and Japan's for Japanese people, and Mexico's for Mexicans, and Brazil's for Brazilians, and all those kinds of things. If you say America's for Americans, you're heading down the road of fascism. You're dangerous. You're all these things, because this could be like Nazi Germany. That's what that authoritarian personality book did. This was the stuff that was pushed into our universities, pushed into our textbooks, basically made it to where you're supposed to question and dislike your parents. Really, again, where the derogatory nature of the way they talk about white Christianity and white people, pardon me, that comes from this mindset of like, oh, I've got to disavow my own people. I can't be seen just liking being a white American kid and thinking that's fine and that's cool. No, that's you're heading down that road. And so you look at some of these points here. I GPT'd it because it's a 1,000-page book, so I wanted to hit the main talking points, and we're certainly not going to get into the whole thing. Authoritarian submission. Idealizing authority figures, they're seeing them as legitimate without critical reflection. That can be dangerous. On the other hand, anti-authoritarian stuff usually is pushed by people who want to be the authority. We see that a lot. Just look at the Bolshevik Revolution and things like that happened. No, this authority stinks. Let us be the authority is what happens. Authoritarian aggression, hostility directed toward individuals or groups perceived as deviant, weak, or violating conventional norms. Again, you can see that being bad, but on the other hand, if you say government should bear the sword against the evildoer, Romans 13, that would also fall under the same category. And so you see where they do this, they very much blur the lines between that which could be extreme and that which is normal, and they make them the same thing. And anybody who holds to normal stuff is guilty of this kind of thing. Conventionalism, rigid adherence to traditional values, norms, and social conventions, especially those tied to family, religion, and nationalism. This is the key right here. If you are conventional, if you hold to traditional values, norms, and social conventions of family, religion, and your nation, you're heading on the road to fascism. This is the thing that has been planted in people's heads by mass media for years and years and years, and by textbooks and all these things, to say, if I think that it was better, that if we're keeping tradition and we don't need to separate ourselves and break ourselves off into individual pieces and reinvent the wheel with every generation, but I want to be like my great-grandpa, and I want my great-grandkids to be like me, and I want them to hold my values, and I want to teach them these things, and you're a fascist. You're heading towards fascism. You see how this gets in there, and so you've got these people standing up and writing this salt and light resistance against people that want a Christian nation, that want to have leaders that reflect these things, that want our nation to look out for its own interests, because it's ridiculous for it to look out for everybody's interests. I mean, this is where you get to these things, and so that's just a little pulling back the curtain a little bit to show where the ideologies come from. So that's where I'm going to end with this. We actually have a really interesting discussion about this on the upcoming Think Deeper podcast. It's titled, What is Christ-likeness, or what does it mean to be Christ-like, or whatever. We go over a number of terms, and one of them was identity in Christ. And we have this 20-minute discussion. Joe and I, Joe the therapist, my brother, had a bit of a debate, but we ended up in the same place generally. But this idea of identity, and everyone's got their own identity to forge, and that is because we have ripped you away from your parents' identity, from your church's identity, from your nation's identity, from your culture's identity, from your region's identity. You don't have any of those things because those are evil, and everybody's got to go find their own. No, you should have an identity. And so to link this back to the salt and light thing, I think it's great that America is, to fly the red, white, and blue, to say I love my country. Not that I think nobody else should love theirs, or that our country should blow up every other country in the world. No, literally the opposite of that. I think we should mind our own business, do good things, submit to God. I want presidents that bow the knee to Christ in prayer, honestly and legitimately, not as a tool, and make laws that hold to those things. Sue me. I'm a fascist. I'm a Nazi. You got me. I mean, this is one of those. They use these incredibly broad terms, incredibly vague, scary-sounding things to basically just say, don't vote for your own interests. Don't vote for your own people's interests. Don't vote for Christianity, Christian laws, but that, it's... You can go read it for yourself. Again, it's the salt and light resistance, like we're in Star Wars. They're the resistance, even though, again, they have the majority position. They have all of the power and influence on their side of this thing. But yeah, I don't take kindly to being a Nazi for saying I want my nation to be Christian and to take care of its own people and to punish crime and to, I mean, it's just, I could go in circles all day long. But I want to thank everybody who tuned in. I want to get to a few chats before I get out of here. Let's see. Brother said, you can't be faithful Christian, in his opinion today, and vote Democrat. They had a literal abortion clinic at their convention. I mean, abortion clinic and booing God, that's not the side you really want to be aligned with in these things, but to each their own, I guess, on this one. No, not to each their own. Another one says, today we see many people conforming and aligning themselves with the lesser evil in order to defeat the greater evil. We see those who, captivated by a narrative or a cause that sounds noble, end up being deceived and taking parts in the most perverse causes. They have forgotten that Christians belong to a heavenly kingdom, that our citizenship is above, and that we do not make peace with evil, but overcome it with good. Yes, but this is overdone. We do have a heavenly kingdom, but we live here too. Paul loved his kindred according to the flesh in Romans 9, right? It's the nations that are going to come streaming into the kingdom of God. You see the term nations in Revelation a lot because you're still part of a nation, and people are part of a nation even as Christians, and it's okay to be that. And so you can go to there's neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female. That's about value in Christ. It's not about that you're not American anymore. You're not your last. I'm still a Wilkie, even though I'm a Christian, and like I still bear my parents and grandparents and all those things. That's okay. As far as the lesser of evils, pardon me, I'm coming off a cold here. The lesser of two evils, you're going to end up with one of these things. And so either we are going to end up with the Harris vision of the world or the Trump vision of the world. A lot of things I don't love about the Trump vision of the world. It is way better than the Harris vision of the world. It is what it is on that front. And so as you get into the lesser of two evils, no, you shouldn't be promoting evil, but you should be saying, I'm going to do that which can be good. And so that's a whole other discussion as far as that. But as far as that, we belong to a heavenly kingdom. Our citizenship is not of this world. But you live in this world, and Christianity improves this world, and governments are called to to reward the good and punish the evil. Well, how do they know what's good and evil without the Bible? In Psalm 2, the governments are called to, do homage or kiss the Son, lest he be angry with them, and then they be shattered by Jesus because they haven't bowed the knee to him. I want my rulers to bow the knee so they don't get shattered. I think that'd be good. I don't want my nation coming under judgment because I live here and my kids have to live here. And so I want a nation that honors God. And so you even see with a Nebuchadnezzar, and there were bad people in the Bible that God used. There were pagan people in the Bible that God used. We want to bring them toward him and toward Christianity. But the idea that this over-spiritualization, because as was pointed out, they play both sides of this, right? We're not of this world. We're of a separate kingdom. We're all that. But this government's evil, and we've got to stand against it. Like, are you involved in this or not? Do you want this government to do Christian values or not? And so I would say that it is. And so another says, the real B1GK, Western Europeans have lost their countries. That's what's happening. I'm sorry, bringing in mass hordes of Muslim immigrants and bringing Islam and hearing a call to prayer from your city that used to be centered around a cathedral, that's not an improvement. That's not a blessing. That is backsliding. That is, as I've argued many times, God's discipline upon a nation that needs to be repented of and driven back, because that's the right thing for it to be done. They've got to go home. It's just not going to work that way. Marco says, Jack GPT. Marco has a discussion coming up in about half an hour with Cleaved Antiquity, Orthodox guys on infant baptism. So if you're hanging out on YouTube, go over there, hang out for that one as well. I'll be there in the chat for that one too. And then Riley, appreciate you commenting and being here as well, brother. He says, one of the first steps in destabilizing a society is to paint the cultural norm, i.e. traditional values, as evil, it seems. As I said with the authority thing, you have to tear down the one that's there and make people think, oh, that's so bad, so that you can be in charge. And if you don't like the traditional cultural values, you don't like the Christian values, those kinds of things, you got to tear that down and tell people it's evil and make them hate their ancestors and dishonor their father and mother. And when you look in, okay, I'm tangenting here. It's okay. The authoritarian personality book I mentioned, there's a test you can take, the fascism indicator, and you can get a score on the fascism indicator. Spoiler alert, I'm pretty high on the fascism indicator because I believe in traditional values and that government should punish wicked people and, things like that. And so it labels me a fascist. But part of it was about getting rid of and the purpose of traditions and values and things like that. And should we hold on to what came before us? I don't hate my ancestors. Were they perfect? No. Do I pretend they didn't have sins or things that they should have repented of? No. But what's the alternative? And when you go through that quiz, you're going to see there's so much therapy speak. There's so much rejection of parents that they're wanting you to do and of your heritage and all those things. Why? Why? So they can bring their thing in and remove you from your roots to give you the roots they want you to have. Another, Noah says, Gnosticism light. There's a bit of Gnosticism in these my kingdom is not of this world thing. It's not of this world, but it does exist and operate in this world at this time. Another says, of course, we need to protect our countries and our Christian values. YouTube he limits his comment. That was the other part I was trying to get to. I appreciate it. And yeah, I wasn't pushing back too hard. It's just some of that language of not of this world. We've got to balance that right. And so that's, I've done a lot of work on that. I wrote a whole book on this, actually, Christ's Co-Rulers. It's a series of essays on Christians and politics. And so that was just to get all of that off my chest. So you can do with it what you will. It's over on Amazon, really cheap because it was slapped together really quick. And yeah, you just grab the Kindle for a few bucks if you'd like. That's all for the chats. That's all I've seen. I want to thank you guys for all hanging out. I haven't done a lot of streams, but I need to do more of them. So keep an eye out for those. As always, these go up every time I do a video. The audio goes on the Church Reset podcast. If I do an article, I read it and it goes up on Church Reset podcast. It also all goes up on my site, jackwilkie.co. That's jackwilkie.co. You can subscribe there for free, or if you want to support my work for a few bucks a month, you can do that too. And I'm going to sign off with that one. Again, I'll have links to all of these things in the show notes. Salt and Light Resistance, the Pushback, the Christian Chronicle article. Not great, man. Not great. I don't take well to being called Nazi by people whose ideology is allowing for abortion and gay adoption and things like that. Let's focus on the threat that's in front of us and not some imagined boogeyman. So that's where I'm going to wrap. Thanks for everybody for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one.